I decided to tell my story about my ex-wife, Elle. I also hope that by sharing, I can assist anyone here who may be in a relationship with a cheating partner. Maybe reading my story will encourage you to leave a toxic situation and go after what you truly deserve in life. I grew up on a 26-acre horse farm in rural Ohio. My parents' divorce and limited time with my father shaped my understanding of healthy relationships. My mother had several boyfriends, some of whom were unfriendly to my brother and me. Elle and I first met in our mid-teens. Of all places, a church lock-in that neither of us wanted to attend. However, we hit it off right away. She was one of those quirky girls from the mid-2000s who liked to write weird poetry and say random things like spork. She had curly hair and was quite attractive. She approached me and challenged me to an air hockey game, and you can guess what happened next. We were exclusive for 7 years, attending high school and college together. She had unpredictable moments, isolating me from my friends and seeking constant validation. I tolerated her actions because she was my first serious girlfriend. We purchased a home, became engaged, and had a good time. She struggled with career decisions and dropped out of several graduate programs. I helped her financially and emotionally. We also married when we were 23, but I've learned that it's not always the best idea unless you fully understand what a healthy relationship entails. I'd like to emphasize that I believe this was an ideal life. I would wake up early, give a kiss, and head to work where I occasionally faced criticism for not being able to read my boss's mind. I would work on drafting and job takeoffs or go to different job sites and exhaust myself doing various tasks. Since it was a small business and we all had multiple responsibilities, then I would come home, let the dog out, and listen to Elle talk about her day. If I ever complained about my day, she would say I wasn't being manly enough and that it added to her stress. It became a repetitive cycle. I genuinely believed this was completely normal and maybe even better than average. However, things started to go downhill without me realizing it. When Elle landed a new job at a local energy company doing mapping, she was finally earning more than minimum wage, and within a few months her boss took notice of her. I don't think it took more than 4 months before she suddenly landed a job as a process assistant in a big city nearby, which meant she had to commute 2 hours each way. In January 2013, we decided to move to Cleveland to be closer to her workplace. I found a new and much better job. We found a really nice place at a lower price than market value, and everything seemed to be going well again. Sure, she had to work late quite often, but I brushed it off as part of corporate life. She even got a raise for her excellent work. Elle started making new friends at work and was slowly coming out of her shell. Elle also started going out a lot with her work friends, and it didn't take long for her to start coming home very late and completely drunk, which caused a lot of fights between us. Our relationship took a turn for the worse, and we settled into a new routine where we barely talked. And when we did, it was about the most unexciting topics. In December 2014, we visited her parents in Texas, and it was an amazing trip. It reignited our emotions and made me realize how dysfunctional our relationship had become. When we got back, I had a heartfelt conversation with Elle, expressing my desire to invest in each other the way we did during the trip. It was a light bulb moment for me, realizing we had the power to change our relationship. I invited her to join me on that journey. She let out a piercing scream, panic in her eyes, and ran off to the basement. Confused, I followed her, but she accused me of trapping her. She tearfully said she didn't deserve love without any explanation. We decided to give each other space to calm down. The next day, when I tried to discuss it, she denied everything and warned me not to bring it up again or she would leave. After that incident, I became incredibly suspicious that something was going on. Meanwhile, I focused on improving myself first to become a better and more interesting partner. I started setting up a home gym, working out, and got into backpacking and woodworking, things I had always been interested in but never made time for. Al had complained that I had no hobbies and wasn't interesting enough for her, so I took her words to heart and believed that these changes would be more effective than discussing our issues. Surprisingly, this turned out to be one of the few positive outcomes from the relationship. I'm still in good physical shape, looking better than ever before, and I've acquired valuable skills in woodworking and carpentry that have proven useful in various aspects of life. D-Day happened in April of 2015. She stumbled home unbelievably drunk after a night out with her friends. I still can't figure out how she managed to make it back. while I held her hair. She vomited multiple times and eventually passed out on the floor next to the toilet. She was so intoxicated that she breathed in these strange gasps, and I genuinely thought she might stop breathing at one point. I briefly considered calling an ambulance, but decided to wait and see what happened. Her phone was lying beside her on the floor, and it kept receiving text messages. I ignored them for a while, assuming they were just people checking if she got home safely. Eventually, I thought it wouldn't hurt to unlock it using her thumbprint and respond on her behalf. To my surprise, all the texts were from her boss, and the last one said something like, "You only left because you're mad. I made you stop. We can't continue doing it in the office anymore. Frank might catch us." The guy was 30 years older than her, had recently separated from his wife, and was literally living in his mom's basement. In that moment, everything became clear to me, and I felt like the biggest fool for not putting the pieces together over the past 2-3 years. I still feel stupid about it. We were young, but that's no excuse for being so naive and emotionally detached from our marriage. I had always assumed we had grown apart, but the thought of cheating on her never crossed my mind. I just assumed she felt the same way. I start going through all her texts with him and realize that this has been happening for a while. It's unclear when it crossed the line from a close working relationship to an emotional affair, and I'm not sure when the physical stuff started either. However, I did find a message from earlier that same night in between pictures of her at the bar with her shirt pulled down where they were discussing their next meetup, which was just about a week away. At this point, I realized that if I confront her, she'll twist it around and accuse me of snooping or misinterpreting what I read. She always said I had a terrible memory. Now I suspect she was just gaslighting me to hide her own actions instead of directly addressing it. I decide to buy a voice recorder and spend a few days finding a hidden spot in her car to place it. I want to test how long it can record and also figure out the exact location they're planning to meet the day before their meeting. She tells me she needs to go to a nearby town for work and that she'll be late coming home. I reassure her that it's okay and to take her time inside. I'm a bundle of nerves, but somehow manage to keep it together and prevent her from getting suspicious. The hours go by, and around 6 p.m. I leave and drive to a spot near the bar where they're supposed to meet, and bam, there they are, both in her car, getting all touchy-feely and making out. I couldn't bear to watch, so I just drove away, went back home, took some shots, and cried. She comes home later that night, and I don't say anything about what I saw. I just make this dinner. She's all cheery and talks about how well our meeting went, thanking me for being understanding after she goes to bed. I go out and retrieve the voice recorder. I listen to the recording and hear her begging to go back to their office to do the deed. Among other things, I'm at a loss for how to react. She was never like this at home, and she sounded almost unhinged in her desire to be with him. I listen to it all, then go into the bedroom and wake her up. I tell her we need to talk. I ask her if she's cheating, but she denies it. I bring up the name of the bar she was at, and she claims she doesn't even know what it is. I tell her I was there earlier that day and saw some interesting things. Immediately, she starts questioning if I followed her and if there's a tracker in her car. She insists that I have to tell her and says she's on the verge of a panic attack, accusing me of tracking her. It's insane. I tell her that I read her texts from a few weeks ago and went to the bar where she was supposed to meet her boss. In response, she opens her phone to show me that those texts no longer exist, as if that would erase what I witnessed. It's crazy to even think about it now. Finally, she admits that she has been seeing as they've been together a few times, and she tells me that if I make her stop seeing him, she won't love me anymore. Somehow this manipulation works on me. I had no self-confidence, didn't believe in divorce, and thought being with someone to share expenses was better than being alone. And for a few months, that's how it went. She would have meetups with him, and I would try to talk her out of it. There were crazy moments when, as had other girlfriends, and Elle would get jealous. One time she came home crying, and I hugged her while she told me she thought she was breaking up with her for someone else. Deep down, I felt nothing but a sense of ironic humor, like an eye-rolling feeling. I still don't know why I stuck around after that. And of course, they continued seeing each other around that time. She also began having one-night stands with random guys. I discovered a few of them over the years, and I suspect there were more. Eventually, I pushed myself into developing a panic disorder and decided that enough was enough. I handed her the voice recorder and demanded that she end things with S while recording the conversation, or else I would leave. She cried, but eventually agreed. The next day, she did as I asked when she found out that I knew. He immediately panicked, and I got to witness the texts coming in on Elle's new Apple Watch, which she didn't realize doesn't delete messages that are removed from the phone. Things calmed down a bit, and we attended one session of marriage counseling. I agreed not to mention her infidelity during that session as a condition for Elle to agree to go. However, the counselor spent the entire session telling me that I was suffocating Elle by wanting to check her phone and know her whereabouts, which I only started doing after the cheating. We never went back to counseling. That period was from 2015 to 2016. After that, we stayed together, but about twice a year I would discover new instances of infidelity. Once she got drunk and performed BJ on a guy she worked with in the bathroom another time while on a work trip out of state. She began texting a guy and started the strangest emotional affair I have ever heard of. A significant portion of his texts revolved around how his grandma had to wipe his age until he was in his mid-teens, and he enjoyed it. I reached my breaking point when I received a sudden message from N, the wife of one of her co-workers. She had caught her husband and all exchanging texts and snaps, and sent me screenshots of their conversations and said she wanted me to know. Those screenshots made it clear to me that Ella wasn't simply prone to straying or making repeated mistakes. I know it sounds foolish, but when you're in the relationship and make excuses for one thing, it becomes easier to make excuses for the next. I had reached the point of excusing everything. We would have our familiar fight over it. She would end the affair and the cycle would start again in a few months. In the screenshots from NL was saying things like, "I should have slept with you the first time I saw you," and making plans to meet up. When I confronted Elle with the texts, her initial reaction was annoyance that the guy didn't hide it better from his wife. It blew my mind, and when I spoke with N, it was evident that she was devastated. They had 2 kids, and her husband's actions were likely going to destroy their family. Yet here was my supposedly loving wife getting mad at him for not being smart enough to hide the affair properly and claiming that she knew he couldn't handle this kind of relationship later on, and sent me some texts revealing that Elle had told the guy. There's an unwritten code of conduct for cheaters, and he had failed to follow the rules. That was the moment when I finally snapped out of it. It was like I had been in a daze for 6 years of affairs, and even before that, 10 years of overall mistreatment and confusion. I moved into the finished half of the basement, slept on an air mattress next to my gym equipment, and began preparing dissolution papers. I thought that if the dissolution didn't work out, I could always hire a lawyer and file for divorce. I did my best to ghost Elle while still living in the same home, becoming completely unresponsive and emotionally detached. Elle started showering me with affection in her own peculiar way. One time when I came home from work, she had bought a lamp for the basement and placed it next to my air mattress. It was probably the nicest thing she had ever done for me, to really drive everything home. A few days later, she was working from home in the afternoon and didn't realize I had entered the kitchen to grab a drink. I could hear her on speakerphone sitting on the couch, talking to her boss and the guy. This whole mess started with, I overheard him asking if she was alone, and she replied with a yes. I thought to myself, seriously, right now, as I'm getting ready to dissolve our relationship in the same house, she's going to entertain this guy. I tiptoed closer and eavesdropped on their conversation. He started talking about how he had never had closeness in an automated car wash and how he thought it would be exciting. What the heck? I mean, where does she find these guys without hesitation? I walked in, positioned myself behind her on the couch, and yelled out, "Hey, it's nice to hear from you." Elle jumped in surprise and nearly fell off the couch while Ass immediately hung up. I couldn't help but laugh as I went to grab my shoes. Ella shouted. That was rude. I laughed again and put on my coat. She asked where I was going, and I simply replied, I don't know. I must have said it in a way that finally made her understand we are finished. We have been for a while, and now I'm just wrapping things up. She rushes over and blocks the door. I tell her to move, and she gets this strange little smile on her face. I can still picture it. It's as if she still thinks this is all a game, that if she blocks the door, I'll be forced to stay and will remain married. She believes her plan to physically block the door has no chance of failing, and now I'm just stuck. I grabbed her by the shoulders, lifted her a few feet off the ground, and moved her to the side of the door, gently placing her back on her feet. I told her that if she tries to keep me here, I will lose control because I no longer have the patience to deal with her. And all the anger I've suppressed my whole life is still right there, ready to explode. I had never resorted to violence against her, and I still have it. But that was the closest I came. I hopped in my car and drove to one of my favorite local bars where I hung out with friends I had made over the past few years. I sent Elle a text, letting her know that I was aware of her upcoming work trip the following week, and when she returned, she wouldn't be welcome back in the house. Luckily for me, she never came back. She moved in with a guy she had been seeing down there, and they both ended up living in his brother's dining room since the guy was unemployed and staying with his brother. Once again, what a catch. Her cheating life was a regular gym mine. After that, I only saw her a few times. She signed the paperwork I sent her without making any significant changes. To make things easier, I used the leverage that her company would fire both her and her boss if I exposed their relationship. This helped me secure the house, my car, and just under half of the unexpected $20,000 plus credit card debt she had accumulated. Thankfully, none of my retirement accounts were touched, which was a relief. She came back to Ohio in December 2019 to sign the paperwork, and she brought her new boyfriend along, making the situation incredibly awkward, as you can imagine. The new guy seemed to believe that I was responsible for the divorce and labeled me as offensive, thinking he needed to be there in case things turned bad. The next time I saw her was when she came back to collect her belongings from the house. I stood there watching as she packed up. It had been a few months since the divorce. She informed me that she had gotten a new apartment and that her new guy had moved in without asking her. She discovered this when he placed the urn containing his deceased father's ashes on her table while helping her move. She gave me a strange look, as if silently asking for help, and all I could do was laugh. After that encounter, I didn't see her again. Within a week of finalizing the divorce, I had a random encounter with a girl at a concert who approached me and gave me her number. The same thing happened at a local event. Within a month, I was actively dating 4 people, all of whom were better than Elle in every aspect. My friend jokingly said that I had that fresh-on-the-market vibe. I was just genuinely happy for the first time in a long while, and it made attracting new people effortless. I eventually slowed down on the dating front, though I still had a few girlfriends. I focused more on my workout routine and took a trip to Peru, where I hiked the Cordillera Blanca Mountains. Over the past few years, Ella has tried to maintain contact with me, sometimes for legitimate reasons, but mostly just trying to keep me in her life in some way. I choose to ignore it, although it does provide some amusing insights. For instance, her new guy, constantly fake, proposes to her multiple times a week, and it's causing her a lot of stress. She once texted me saying that she's getting married for tax purposes because being single sucks when it comes to taxes, when she found out that I had found someone and got engaged. She sent a congratulatory card to the house that she personally hand-painted, but it went straight into the trash. Another interesting tidbit is that her new guy was recently diagnosed with MS. I can't imagine Elle sticking around and suddenly becoming caring enough to take care of a man 10 years her senior with a neurological condition. In August 2020, I met my current wife, Sai. She's incredible and had just gotten out of a bad marriage with someone who seems to be a carbon copy of Elle. We hit it off when I was chatting with a friend and casually mentioned that I was looking for someone who's normal. She overheard it, and we exchanged a brief knowing look that said, "Me too." After 2 years of dating, we got married this past September, and in the entire year that we've been together, we haven't even had a single fight. We take care of each other, communicate every day, and it's always a beautiful experience. It's hard to put into words, but she's truly the one for me. I'm doing so much better now. When I look back on all of that on literally half of my life, I can't help but wonder why I stayed for so long and endured so much. It's especially baffling when I realize how easy it was to find someone so perfect afterwards. If any of you have made it this far and are currently in a bad relationship wondering what to do, I understand. I think most of us do. You tolerate things that you never thought you would. You convince yourself that the person you've invested so much in couldn't possibly be doing these things on purpose. You make excuses for almost anything. You essentially turn yourself into a doormat. But let me tell you, it's not worth it. Just get out. Because if cheating happened once, it's likely to happen again and again. After that, cheaters will tell themselves whatever they need to hear in order to avoid feeling guilty about their actions. They will always find a way to justify it both to themselves and to you. And you'll always wonder what they're up to when they're not with you. You deserve better than that. So leave, cut your losses, do whatever it takes. My fear of divorce and lack of self-confidence kept me in that situation far longer than I should have. And nothing that happened in the years after I found out about the cheating did any good for me. The only person who can truly improve your mindset is yourself. Focus on yourself and the people who genuinely care about you. It does get better once you walk away. I appreciate each and every one of you who listened to the story today. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe, if you haven't already. Additionally, please leave a comment below reflecting on what happened. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have a story to tell about your own or another person's situation. Take care.